This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Sky Island by L. Frank Baum. Chapter 11. Button-Bright Encounters the Blue Wolf. A low, fierce growl greeted him. The treasure chamber was pretty dark, although the moonlight came in through some of the windows, but the boy had brought with him the low brass lamp that lighted the corridor, and this he set upon a table beside the door before he took time to look around him. The treasure chamber was heaped and crowded with all the riches the Boolaroo had accumulated during his reign of 200 or 300 years. Piles of gold and jewels were on all sides, and precious ornaments and splendid cloths, rare pieces of carved furniture, bric-a-brac, and the like, were strewn about the room in astonishing profusion. Just at the boy's feet crouched a monstrous animal of most fearful aspect. He knew at a glance it was the terrible Blue Wolf, and the sight of the beast sent a shiver through him. The Blue Wolf's head was fully as big as that of a lion, and its wide jaws were armed with rows of long, pointed teeth. Its shoulders and front legs were huge and powerful, but the rest of the wolf's body dwindled away until at the tail it was no bigger than a dog. The jaws were therefore the dangerous part of the creature, and its small blue eyes flashed wickedly at the intruder. Just as the boy made his first step forward, the Blue Wolf sprang upon him with its enormous jaws stretched wide open. Button-Bright jammed the sofa pillow into the brute's mouth and crowded it in as hard as he could. The terrible teeth came together and buried themselves in the pillow, and then Mr. Wolf found he could not pull them out again, because his mouth was stuffed full. He could not even growl or yelp, but rolled upon the floor, trying in vain to release himself from the conquering pillow. Button-Bright paid no further attention to the helpless animal, but caught up the blue brass lamp and began a search for his umbrella. Of course he could not find it, as it was not there. He came across a small book, bound in light blue leather, which lay upon an exquisitely carved center table. It was named, in dark blue letters stamped on the leather, the Royal Record Book, and remembering that Ghip Ghisizzle longed to possess this book, Button-Bright hastily concealed it inside his blouse. Then he renewed his search for the umbrella, but it was quite in vain. He hunted in every crack and corner, tumbling the treasures here and there in the quest. But at last he became positive that the Magic Umbrella had been removed from the room. The boy was bitterly disappointed and did not know what to do next, but he noticed that the Blue Wolf had finally seized an edge of the sofa pillow in its sharp claws and was struggling to pull the thing out of his mouth. So there being no object in his remaining longer in the room, where he might have to fight the wolf again, Button-Bright went out and locked the door behind him. While he stood in the corridor, wondering what to do next, a sudden shouting reached his ears. It was the voice of the Boolaroo crying, "My key! My key! Who has stolen my golden key?" And then there followed shouts of soldiers and guards and servants, and the rapid pattering of feet was heard throughout the palace. Button-Bright took to his heels and ran along the passages until he came to Cap'n Bill's room, where the sailorman and Trot were anxiously awaiting him. "Quick!" cried the boy. "We must escape from here at once, or we will be caught and patched." "Where's the umbrel?" asked Cap'n Bill. "I don't know. I can't find it. But all the palace is aroused, and the Boolaroo is furious. Come, let's get away at once." "Where'll we go?" inquired Trot. "We must make for the open country and hide in the Fog Bank or in the Arch of Phinis," replied the boy. They did not stop to argue any longer, but all three stepped out of the little door into the street, where they first clasped hands so they would not get separated in the dark, and then ran as swiftly as they could down the street, which was deserted at this hour by the citizens. They could not go very fast because the sailorman's wooden leg was awkward to run with and held them back, but Cap'n Bill hobbled quicker than he had ever hobbled before in all his life, and they really made pretty good progress. They met no one on the streets and continued their flight until at last they came to the city wall, which had a blue iron gate in it. Here was a Blueskin guard, who had been peacefully slumbering when aroused by the footsteps of the fugitives. "Halt!" cried the guard, fiercely. Cap'n Bill halted, long enough to grab the man around his long neck with one hand and around his long leg with the other hand. Then he raised the Blueskin in the air and threw him far over the wall. A moment later they had unfastened the gate and fled into the open country, where they headed toward the low mountain whose outlines were plainly visible in the moonlight. The guard was now howling and crying for help. In the city were answering shouts. A hue and cry came from every direction, reaching as far as the palace. Lights began to twinkle everywhere in the streets, and the blue city hummed like a beehive filled with angry bees. "It won't do for us to get caught now," panted Cap'n Bill as they ran along. "I'm more afeard o' them blue citizens ner I am o' the Boolaroo. They'd tear us to pieces if they could." Sky Island was not a very big place, especially the blue part of it, and our friends were now very close to the low mountain. Presently they paused before a grim archway of blue marble, above which was carved the one word "Finis." The interior seemed dark and terrible as they stopped to regard it as a possible place of refuge. "Don't like that place, Cap'n," whispered Trot. "No more do I, mate," he answered. "I think I'd rather take a chance on the Fog Bank," said Button Bright. Just then they were all startled by a swift flapping of wings, and a voice cried in shrill tones: "Where are you, Trot? As like as not I've been forgot." Cap'n Bill jumped this way and Button Bright that, and then there alighted on Trot's shoulder the blue parrot that had been the pet of Princess Cerulia. Said the bird: "Gee, I've flown here all alone. It's pretty far, but here we are." And then he barked like a dog and chuckled with glee at having found his little friend. In escaping from the palace, Trot had been obliged to leave all the pets behind her, but it seemed that the parrot had found some way to get free and follow her. They were all astonished to hear the bird talk, and in poetry, too. But Cap'n Bill told Trot that some parrots he had known had possessed a pretty fair gift of language, and he added that this blue one seemed an unusually bright bird. "As for poetry," said he, "that's as how you look at poetry. Rhymes come from your head, but real poetry from your heart. And whether the blue parrot has a heart or not, he's sure got a head." Having decided not to venture into the Arch of Finis, they again started on, this time across the country straight toward the Fog Bank, which hung like a blue-gray cloud directly across the center of the island. They knew they were being followed by bands of the Blueskins, for they could hear the shouts of their pursuers growing louder and louder every minute, since their long legs covered the ground more quickly than our friends could possibly go. Had the journey been much farther, the fugitives would have been overtaken, but when the leaders of the pursuing Blueskins were only a few yards behind them, they reached the edge of the Fog Bank and without hesitation plunged into its thick mist, which instantly hid them from view. The Blueskins fell back, horrified at the mad act of the strangers. To them the Fog Bank was the most dreadful thing in existence, and no Blueskin had ever ventured within it, even for a moment. "That's the end of those short-necked Yellowskins," said one, shaking his head. "We may as well go back and report the matter to the Boolaroo." End of chapter 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Sky Island by L. Frank Baum. Chapter 12. Through the Fog Bank. It was rather moist in the Fog Bank. "Seems like a regular drizzle," said Trot. "I'll be soaked through in a minute." She had been given a costume of blue silk in exchange for her own dress, and the silk was so thin that the moisture easily wetted it. "Never mind," said Cap'n Bill. "When it's a case o' life an' death, Clothes don't count for much. I'm sort o' drippy myself," cried the parrot, fluttering his feathers to try to keep them from sticking together. "Floods and gushes fill our path. This is not my day for a bath. Shut it off, or fear my wrath." "We can't," laughed Trot. "We'll just have to stick it out till we get to the other side." "Had we better go to the other side?" asked Button Bright anxiously. "Why not?" returned Cap'n Bill. "The other side's the only safe side for us." "We don't know that, sir," said the boy. "Ghip Ghisizzle said it was a terrible country." "I don't believe it," retorted the sailor stoutly. "Sizzle's never been there, and he knows nothing about it. The Sunset Country sounds sorter good to me." "But how'll we ever manage to get there?" inquired Trot. "Aren't we already lost in this fog?" "Not yet," said Cap'n Bill. "I've kep' my face turned straight ahead ever since we climbed inter this bank o' wetness. If we don't get twisted any, we'll go straight through to the other side." It was no darker in the Fog Bank than it had been in the Blue Country. They could see dimly the mass of fog, which seemed to cling to them, and when they looked down they discovered that they were walking upon white pebbles that were slightly tinged with the blue color of the sky. Gradually this blue became fainter until, as they progressed, everything became a dull gray. "I wonder how far it is to the other side," remarked Trot wearily. "We can't say till we get there, mate," answered the sailor in a cheerful voice. Cap'n Bill had a way of growing more and more cheerful when danger threatened. "Never mind," said the girl. "I'm as wet as a dish rag now, and I'll never get any wetter." "Wet, wet, wet! It's awful wet, you bet!" moaned the parrot on her shoulder. "I'm a fish pond, I'm a well, I'm a clam without a shell." "Can't you dry up?" asked Cap'n Bill. "Not this evening, thank you, sir. To talk and grumble I prefer," replied the parrot dolefully. They walked along more slowly now, still keeping hold of hands, for although they were anxious to get through the Fog Bank, they were tired with the long run across the country and with their day's adventures. They had had no sleep, and it was a long time past midnight. "Look out!" cried the parrot sharply, and they all halted to find a monstrous frog obstructing their path. Cap'n Bill thought it was as big as a whale, and as it squatted on the gray pebbles its eyes were on a level with those of the old sailor. "Ker-chug, ker-choo!" grunted the frog. "What in the sky is this crowd?" "We're strangers," stammered Trot, "and we're trying to 'scape from the Blueskins and get into the Pink Country." "I don't blame you," said the frog in a friendly tone. "I hate those Blueskins. The Pinkies, however, are very decent neighbors." "Oh, I'm glad to hear that!" cried Button Bright. "Can you tell us, Mistress, Mr. Frog, your Royal Highness, if we're on the right road to the Pink Country?" The frog seemed to laugh, for he gurgled in his throat in a very funny way. "I'm no Royal Highness," he said. "I'm just a common frog, and a little wee tiny frog, too. But I hope to grow in time. This Fog Bank is the paradise of frogs, and our King is about 10 times as big as I am." "Then he's a big 'un, and no mistake," admitted Cap'n Bill. "I'm glad you like your country, but it's a mite too damp for us, and we'd be glad to get out of it." "Follow me," said the frog. "I'll lead you to the border. It's only about 6 jumps." He turned around, made a mighty leap, and disappeared in the gray mist. Our friends looked at one another in bewilderment. "Don't see how we can foller that lead," remarked Cap'n Bill. "But we may as well start in the same direction." "Brooks and creeks, how it leaks!" muttered the parrot. "How can we jog to a frog in a fog?" The big frog seemed to understand their difficulty, for he kept making noises in his throat to guide them to where he had leaped. When at last they came up to him, he made a second jump, out of sight as before, and when they attempted to follow, they found a huge lizard lying across the path. Cap'n Bill thought it must be a giant alligator at first, it was so big, but he looked at them sleepily and did not seem at all dangerous. "Oh, Liz, you puffy Liz, get out of our way and mind your biz!" cried the parrot. "Creep-a-mousy, crawl-a-mousy, please move on. We can't move a step till you are gone." "Don't disturb me," said the Lizard. "I'm dreaming about parsnips. Did you ever taste a parsnip?" "We're in a hurry, if it's the same to you, sir," said Cap'n Bill politely. "Then climb over me or go around. I don't care which," murmured the Lizard. "When they're little they're juicy; when they're big there's more of 'em; but either way there's nothing so delicious as a parsnip. There are none here in the Fog Bank, so the best I can do is dream of them. Oh, parsnips, parsnips, parsnips!" He closed his eyes sleepily and resumed his dreams. Walking around the Lizard, they resumed their journey and soon came to the frog, being guided by its grunts and croaks. Then off it went again, its tremendous leap carrying it far into the fog. Suddenly Cap'n Bill tripped and would have fallen flat had not Trot and Button Bright held him up. Then he saw that he had stumbled over the claw of a gigantic land crab, which lay sprawled out upon the pebbly bottom. "Oh, beg parding, I'm sure!" exclaimed Cap'n Bill, backing away. "Don't mention it," replied the crab in a tired tone. "You did not disturb me, so there is no harm done." "We didn't know you were here," explained Trot. "Probably not," said the crab. "It's no place for me, anyhow, for I belong in the constellations, you know, with Taurus and Gemini and the other fellows. But I had the misfortune to tumble out of the Zodiac some time ago. My name is Cancer, but I'm not a disease. Those who examine the heavens in these days, alas, can find no cancer there." "Yes, we can, sir, Mr. Cancer," said the parrot with a chuckle. "Once," remarked Cap'n Bill, "I saw a picture of you in an almanac." "Ah, the almanacs always did us full justice," the crab replied, "but I'm told they're not fashionable now." "If you don't mind, we'd like to pass on," said Button Bright. "No, I don't mind, but be careful not to step on my legs. They're rheumatic, it's so moist here." They climbed over some of the huge legs and walked around others. Soon they had left the creature far behind. "Aren't you rather slow?" asked the frog, when once more they came up to him. "It isn't that," said Trot. "You are rather swift, I guess." The frog chuckled and leaped again. They noticed that the fog had caught a soft rose tint and was lighter and less dense than before, for which reason the sailor remarked that they must be getting near to the Pink Country. On this jump they saw nothing but a monstrous turtle, which lay asleep with its head and legs drawn into its shell. It was not in their way, so they hurried on and rejoined the frog, which said to them: "I'm sorry, but I'm due at the King's court in a few minutes, and I can't wait for your short, weak legs to make the journey to the Pink Country. But if you will climb upon my back, I think I can carry you to the border in one more leap." "I'm tired," said Trot, "and this awful fog's beginning to choke me. Let's ride on the frog, Cap'n." "Right you are, mate," he replied, and although he shook a bit with fear, the old man at once began to climb to the frog's back. Trot seated herself on one side of him and Button Bright on the other, and the sailor put his arms around them both to hold them tight together. "Are you ready?" asked the frog. "Ding dong!" cried the parrot. "All aboard! Let her go! Jump the best jump that you know!" "Don't! Jump sorta easy, please!" begged Cap'n Bill. But the frog was unable to obey his request. Its powerful hind legs straightened like steel springs and shot the big body with its passengers through the fog like an arrow launched from a bow. They gasped for breath and tried to hang on, and then suddenly the frog landed just at the edge of the fog bank, stopping so abruptly that his three riders left his back and shot far ahead of him. They felt the fog melt away and found themselves bathed in glorious rays of sunshine. But they had no time to consider this change, because they were still shooting through the air, and presently, before they could think of anything at all three were rolling heels over head on the soft grass of a meadow. End of chapter 12. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Sky Island, by L. Frank Baum. Chapter 13. The Pink Country. When the travelers could collect their senses and sit up, they stared about them in bewilderment, for the transition from the sticky, damp fog to this brilliant scene was so abrupt as to daze them at first. It was a pink country, indeed. The grass was a soft pink. The trees were pink. All the fences and buildings which they saw in the near distance were pink. Even the gravel in the pretty paths was pink. Many shades of color were there, of course, grading from a faint blush rose to deep pink verging on red, but no other color was visible. In the sky hung a pink glow, with rosy clouds floating here and there, and the sun was not silvery white, as we see it from the earth, but a distinct pink. The sun was high in the sky just now, which proved the adventurers had been a long time in passing through the fog bank. But all of them were wonderfully relieved to reach this beautiful country in safety, for aside from the danger that threatened them in the Blue Country, the other side of the island was very depressing. Here the scene that confronted them was pretty and homelike, except for the prevailing color and the fact that all the buildings were round, without a single corner or angle. Half a mile distant was a large city, its pink tintings glistening bravely in the pink sunshine, while hundreds of pink banners floated from its numerous domes. The country between the fog bank and the city was like a vast garden, very carefully kept and neat as wax. The parrot was fluttering its wings and pruning its feathers to remove the wet of the fog. Trot and Button-Bright and Cap'n Bill were all soaked to the skin and chilled through, but as they sat upon the pink grass they felt the rays of the sun sending them warmth and rapidly drying their clothes. So, being tired out, they laid themselves comfortably down, and first one and then another fell cozily asleep. It was the parrot that aroused them. "Look out! Look out! There's folks about!" it screamed. "The apple dumplings, fat and pink, will be here quicker than a wink." Trot started up in alarm and rubbed her eyes. Cap'n Bill rolled over and blinked, hardly remembering where he was. Button-Bright was on his feet in an instant. Advancing toward them were 4 of the natives of the Pink Country. 2 were men and 2 were women, and their appearance was in sharp contrast to that of the Blueskins, for the Pinkies were round and chubby, almost like apple dumplings, as the parrot had called them, and they were not very tall, the highest of the men being no taller than Trot or Button-Bright. They all had short necks and legs, pink hair and eyes, rosy cheeks and pink complexions, and their faces were good-natured and jolly in expression. The men wore picturesque pink clothing and round hats with pink feathers in them, but the apparel of the women was still more gorgeous and striking. Their dresses consisted of layer after layer of gauzy tucks and ruffles and laces, caught here and there with bows of dainty ribbon. The skirts, which of course were of many shades of pink, were so fluffy and light that they stuck out from the fat bodies of the Pinky women like the skirts of ballet dancers, displaying their chubby pink ankles and pink kid shoes. They wore rings and necklaces and bracelets and brooches of rose gold set with pink gems, and all 4 of the new arrivals, both men and women, carried sharp-pointed sticks made of rosewood for weapons. They halted a little way from our adventurers, and one of the women muttered in a horrified voice, "Blueskins!" "Guess again. The more you guess, I rather think you'll know the less," retorted the parrot, and then he added grumblingly in Trot's ear, "Blue feathers don't make blue birds." "Really," said the little girl, standing up and bowing respectfully to the Pinkies, "we are not Blueskins, although we are wearing the blue uniforms of the Boolaroo, and have just escaped from the Blue Country. If you will look closely, you will see that our skins are white." "There is some truth in what she says," remarked one of the men thoughtfully. "Their skins are not blue, but neither are they white. To be exact, I should call the skin of the girl and that of the boy a muddy pink, rather faded, while the skin of the gigantic monster with them is an unpleasant brown. Cap'n Bill looked cross for a minute, for he did not like to be called a gigantic monster, although he realized he was much larger than the pink people. "What country did you come from?" asked the woman who had first spoken. "From the earth," replied Button-Bright. "The earth! The earth!" they repeated. "That is a country we have never heard of. Where is it located?" "Why, down below, somewhere," said the boy, who did not know in what direction the earth lay. "It isn't just one country, but a good many countries." "We have 3 countries in Sky Island," returned the woman. "They are the Blue Country, the Fog Country, and the Pink Country. But of course this end of the island is the most important." "How came you in the Blue Country, from whence you say you escaped?" asked the man. "We flew there by means of a magic umbrella," explained Button-Bright, "but the wicked Boolaroo stole it from us." "Stole it! How dreadful!" they all cried in a chorus. "And they made us slaves," said Trot. "And wanted fer to patch us," added Cap'n Bill indignantly. "So we ran away and passed through the Fog Bank and came here," said Button-Bright. The Pinkies turned away and conversed together in low tones. Then one of the women came forward and addressed the strangers. "Your story is the strangest we have ever heard," said she, "and your presence here is still more strange and astonishing. So we have decided to take you to Tourmaline and let her decide what shall be your fate." "Who is Tourmaline?" inquired Trot doubtfully, for she didn't like the idea of being "taken" to anyone. "The Queen of the Pinkies. She is the sole ruler of our country, so the word of Tourmaline is the law of the land." "Seems to me we've had 'bout enough of kings and queens," remarked Cap'n Bill. "Can't we shy your Tourmaline, or whatever you call her, in some way, and deal with you direct?" "No. Until we prove your truth and honor, we must regard you as enemies of our race. If you had a magic umbrella, you may be magicians and sorcerers, come here to deceive us and perhaps betray us to our natural enemies, the Blueskins." "Mud and bricks! Fiddlesticks! We don't play such nasty tricks!" yelled the parrot angrily, and this caused the Pinkies to shrink back in alarm, for they had never seen a parrot before. "Surely this is magic," declared one of the men. "No bird can talk unless inspired by witchcraft." "Oh yes, parrots can," said Trot. But this incident had determined the Pinkies to consider our friends prisoners and to take them immediately before their queen. "Must we fight you?" asked the woman, "or will you come with us peaceably?" "We'll go peaceable," answered Cap'n Bill. "You're a makin' a sad mistake, for we're as harmless as doves. But seein' as you're suspicious, we'd better have it out with your queen first as last." Their clothing was quite dry by this time, although much wrinkled and discolored by the penetrating fog, so at once they prepared to follow the Pinkies. The 2 men walked on either side of them, holding the pointed sticks ready to jab them if they attempted to escape, and the 2 women followed in the rear, also armed with sharp sticks. So the procession moved along the pretty roadways to the city, which they soon reached. There was a strong, high wall of pink marble around it, and they passed through a gate made of pink metal bars and found themselves in a most delightful and picturesque town. The houses were big and substantial, all round in shape with domed roofs and circular windows and doorways. In all the place there was but one street, a circular one that started at the gate and wound like a corkscrew toward the center of the city. It was paved with pink marble, and between the street and the houses that lined both sides of it were gardens filled with pink flowers and pink grass lawns, which were shaded by pink trees and shrubbery. As the Queen lived in the very center of the city, the captives were obliged to parade the entire length of this street, and that gave all the pink citizens a chance to have a good look at the strangers. The Pinkies were every one short and fat and gorgeously dressed in pink attire, and their faces indicated that they were contented and happy. They were much surprised at Cap'n Bill's great size and wooden leg, 2 very unusual things in their experience. and the old sailor frightened more than one Pinky boy and girl and sent them scampering into the houses, where they viewed the passing procession from behind the window shutters in comparative safety. As for the grown people, many of them got out their sharp-pointed sticks to use as weapons in case the strangers attacked them or broke away from their guards. A few, more bold than the others, followed on at the tail of the procession, and so presently they all reached an open circular place in the exact center of the Pink City. End of chapter 13. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Sky Island by L. Frank Baum. Chapter 14. Tourmaline, the Poverty Queen. The open space which they entered was paved with pink marble, and around it were 2 rows of large pink statues, at least life-size and beautifully sculptured. All were set upon nicely carved pink pedestals. They were, of course, statues of Pinky men and women, and all had bands of pink metal around their foreheads, in the center of each band being a glistening pink jewel. About the middle of the open space inside the statues, which appeared to be the public meeting place of the Pinkies, was a small, low house, domed like all the other houses, but built of a coarse pink stone instead of the fine marble to be seen everywhere else. It had no ornamentation, being exceedingly plain in appearance. No banners floated from it, no flowers grew near it. "Here," said one of their guides, as the procession halted before the little stone building, "is the palace of Tourmaline, who is our queen." "What? That little cabin?" exclaimed Trot. "Of course. Did you suppose a palace would be like one of our handsome residences?" asked the woman, evidently surprised. "I thought it would be better," said the girl. "All the palaces I've seen were splendid." "A splendid palace!" exclaimed one of the Pinkies, and they all looked at one another in amazement and seemed to doubt that their ears had heard aright. "These intruders are very peculiar people," remarked a man in the crowd. "They seem very ignorant, poor things," said another in reply. "Come," commanded the woman who led the party. "You 3 must follow me to the presence of Tourmaline. The people must wait outside, for there is no room for them in the palace." So they followed her through the low archway, and in a room beyond, very simply furnished, sat a young girl engaged in darning a pair of pink stockings. She was a beautiful girl of about 17 years of age, not fat like all the rest of the Pinkies, but slender and well formed according to our ideas of beauty. Her complexion was not a decided pink, but a soft rosy tint not much deeper than that of Trot's skin. Instead of a silken gown, fur-bellowed like all the others they had seen women wear in this land, Tourmaline was dressed in a severely plain robe of coarse pink cloth, much resembling bed-ticking. Across her brow, however, was a band of rose gold, in the center of which was set a luminous pink jewel which gleamed more brilliantly than a diamond. It was her badge of office, and seemed very incongruous when compared with her poor raiment and simple surroundings. As they entered, the girl sighed and laid down her work. Her expression was patient and resigned as she faced her audience. "What is it, Coralie?" she asked the woman. "Here are 3 strange people, Tourmaline," was the reply, "who say they have entered our country through the Fog Bank. They tell a queer story of an escape from the Blueskins, so I decided to bring them to you, that you may determine their fate." The Queen gazed upon our friends with evident interest. She smiled a little sadly at Trot, seemed to approve of Button-Bright's open, frank face, and was quite surprised because Cap'n Bill was so much bigger than her own people. "Are you a giant?" she asked the sailor, in a soft, sweet voice. "No, your Majesty," he replied. "I'm only—" "Majesty!" she exclaimed, flushing a deeper pink. Are you addressing that word to me?" "Of course, ma'am," answered Cap'n Bill. "I'm told that's the proper way to speak to a queen." "Perhaps you are trying to ridicule me," she continued, regarding the sailor's face closely. "There is nothing majestic about me, as you know very well. Coralie, do you consider 'majesty' a proper word to use when addressing a queen?" she added, appealing to the Pinky woman. "By no means," was the prompt reply. "What shall I call her, then?" inquired Cap'n Bill. "Just Tourmaline. That is her name, and it is sufficient," said the woman. "The ruler of a country ought to be treated with great respect," declared Trot, a little indignantly, for she thought the pretty little queen was not being properly deferred to. "Why?" asked Tourmaline, curiously. "Because the ruler is the most 'ristocratic person in any land," explained the little girl. "Even in America everybody bows low to our President, and the Blueskins are so 'fraid of their Boolaroo that they tremble whenever they go near him." "But surely that is all wrong," said Tourmaline, gravely. "The ruler is appointed to protect and serve the people, and here in the Pink Country I have the full power to carry out the laws. I even decree death when such a punishment is merited. Therefore I am a mere agent to direct the laws, which are the will of the people, and am only a public servant, obliged constantly to guard the welfare of my subjects." "In that case," said Button Bright, "you're entitled to the best there is to pay for your trouble. A powerful ruler ought to be rich and to live in a splendid palace. Your folks ought to treat you with great respect, as Trot says." "Oh no," responded Tourmaline, quickly. "That would indeed be very wrong. Too much should never be given to anyone. If, with my great power, conferred upon me by the people, I also possessed great wealth, I might be tempted to be cruel and overbearing. In that case my subjects would justly grow envious of my superior station. If I lived as luxuriously as my people do, and had servants and costly gowns, the good Pinkies would say that their queen had more than they themselves. And it would be true. No, our way is best. The ruler, be it king or queen, has absolute power to rule, but no riches, no high station, no false adulation. The people have the wealth and honor, for it is their due. The queen has nothing but the power to execute the laws, to adjust grievances, and to compel order." "What pays you, then, for all your bother?" asked Trot. "I have one great privilege. After my death a pink marble statue of me will be set up in the Grand Court, with the statues of the other kings and queens who have ruled this land, and all the Pinkies in ages to come will then honor me as having been a just and upright queen. That is my reward." "I'm sorry for you, ma'am," said Cap'n Bill. "Your pay for bein' a queen is sort o' like a life insurance. It don't come due till after you're dead, and then you can't get much fun out of it." "I did not choose to be the queen," answered Tourmaline, simply. "A misfortune of birth placed me here, and I cannot escape my fate. It is much more desirable to be a private citizen, happy and carefree. But we have talked long enough of myself. Tell me who you are and why you have come here." Between them they told the story of how the Magic Umbrella had taken them to Sky Island, which they did not know, when they started, was anywhere in existence. Button Bright told this, and then Trot related their adventures among the Blueskins and how the Boolaroo had stolen the umbrella and prevented them from going home again. The parrot on her shoulder kept interrupting her continually, for the mention of the Boolaroo seemed to make the bird frantic with rage. "Naughty, naughty Boolaroo! He's the worst I ever knew!" the parrot repeated over and over again. Cap'n Bill finished the story by telling of their escape through the Fog Bank. "We didn't know what your Pink Country was like, of course," he said, "but we knew it couldn't be worse than the Blue Country, and we didn't take any stock in their stories that the Fog Bank would be the death of us." Pretty wet was the journey, you can bet," declared the parrot in conclusion. "Yes, it was wet and sticky, all right," agreed the sailor, "but the big frog helped us, and we got through all right." "But what can you do here?" asked Tourmaline. You are not like my people, the Pinkies, and there is no place for you in our country." "That's true enough," said Cap'n Bill. "But we had to go somewhere, and this was the likeliest place we could think of. Your Sky Island ain't very big, so when we couldn't stay in the Blue Country, where ever'body hated us, or in the Fog Bank, which ain't healthy and is too wet for humans to live in for long, we naturally were forced to enter the Pink Country, where we expected to find nice people." "We are nice," said Tourmaline, "but it is our country, not yours, and we have no place here for strangers. In all our history you are the first people from outside our borders who have ever stepped a foot in our land. We do not hate you, as you say the Blueskins do, nor are we savage or cruel, but we do not want you here, and I am really puzzled what to do with you." "Isn't there a law to cover this case?" asked Coralie. "I do not remember any such law," replied the Queen, "but I will search in the Great Book and see if I can find anything that refers to strange people entering our land." "If not," said the woman, "you must make a law. It is your duty." "I know," answered Tourmaline, "but I hope such a responsibility will not fall upon my shoulders. These poor strangers are in a very uncomfortable position, and I wish I could help them to get back to their own country." "Thank you," said Trot. "We wish so, too. Haven't you any fairies here?" "Oh, there are fairies, of course, as there are everywhere," answered Tourmaline, "but none that we can call to our assistance or command to do our bidding." "How about witches?" asked Button Bright. "I know of one witch," said Tourmaline, thoughtfully, "but she is not very obliging. She says it makes her head ache to perform witchcraft, and so she seldom indulges in it. But if there is no other way, I may be obliged to call upon Rosalie for help. I'll look in the Great Book first. Meantime, you will go home with Coralie, who will feed you and give you entertainment. Tomorrow morning come to me again, and then I will decree your fate." The little Queen then picked up her stocking and began to darn the holes in it, and Coralie, without any formal parting, led the strangers from the miserable palace. End of chapter 14. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Sky Island by L. Frank Baum. Chapter 15. The Sunrise Tribe and the Sunset Tribe. Although Trot and her comrades were still prisoners, they were far more comfortable than they had been in the Blue Country. Coralie took them to her own home, where she lived in great luxury, being one of the prominent women of the Pinkies. In this country the women seemed fully as important as the men, and instead of being coddled and petted, they performed their share of the work, both in public and private affairs, and were expected to fight in the wars exactly as the men did. Our friends learned considerable about the Pinkies during that afternoon and evening, for their hostess proved kind and agreeable and frankly answered all their questions. Although this half of Sky Island was no larger than the Blue Country, being no more than 2 miles square, it had several hundred inhabitants. These were divided into 2 tribes, which were called the Sunrise Tribe and the Sunset Tribe. The Sunrise Tribe lived in the eastern half of the Pink Country, and the Sunset Tribe in the west half, and there was great rivalry between them, and sometimes wars. It was all a question of social importance. The Sunrise Tribe claimed that every day the sun greeted them first of all, which proved they were the most important. But on the other hand, the Sunset Tribe claimed that the sun always deserted the other tribe and came to them, which was evidence that they were the most attractive people. On Sky Island, at least on the pink side, the sun arose in wonderful splendor, but also it set in a blaze of glory, and so there were arguments on both sides for want of something better to argue about. The Pinkies took this queer subject as a cause of dispute. Both tribes acknowledged Tourmaline their queen and obeyed the laws of the country. And just at this time there was peace in the land, and all the inhabitants of the east and west were friendly. But they had been known, Coralie said, to fight one another fiercely with the sharp sticks, at which time a good many were sure to get hurt. "Why do they call this an island?" asked Button-Bright. "There isn't any water around it, is there?" "No, but there is sky all around it," answered Coralie. "And if one should step off the edge he would go tumbling into the great sky and never be heard of again." "Is there a fence around the edge?" asked Trot. "Only a few places are fenced," was the reply. "Usually there are rows of thick bushes set close to the edge to prevent people from falling off. Once there was a king of the Pinkies who was so cruel and overbearing and imagined he was superior to the people he ruled. So one day his subjects carried him to the edge of the island and threw him over the bushes." "Goodness me!" said Trot. "He might have hit someone on the earth." "Guess he skipped it, though," added Cap'n Bill, "for I never heard of a Pinky till I came here." "And I have never heard of the earth," retorted Coralie. "Of course there must be such a place, because you came from there. But the earth is never visible in our sky." "No," said Button-Bright, "'cause it's under your island. But it's there, all right, and it's a pretty good place to live. I wish I could get back to it." "So do I, Button-Bright!" exclaimed Trot. "Let's fly!" cried the parrot, turning his head so that one bright little eye looked directly into the girl's eye. "Say good bye and let's fly through the sky, far and high." "If we only had my umbrella, we'd fly in a minute," sighed Button-Bright. "But the Boolaroo stole it." "Naughty, naughty Boolaroo! What a wicked thing to do!" wailed the parrot, and they all agreed with him. Coralie belonged to the Sunset Tribe, as she lived west of the Queen's palace, which was the center of the Pink Country. A servant came to the room where they were conversing to state that the sun was about to set, and at once Coralie arose and took the strangers to an upper balcony where all the household had assembled. The neighboring houses also had their balconies and roofs filled with people, for it seemed all the Sunset Tribe came out every night to witness the setting of the sun. It was really a magnificent sight, and Trot scarcely breathed as the great golden ball sank low in the sky and colored all the clouds with gorgeous tints of orange, red and yellow. Never on the earth was there visible such splendor, and as the little girl watched the ever-changing scene she decided the Sunset Tribe was amply justified in claiming that the West was the favored country of the sun. "You see," said Cap'n Bill, "the sky is all around us, and we're high up. So the sun really loses itself in the clouds and leaves a trail of beauty behind him." "He does that," agreed Trot. "This is almost worth comin' for, Cap'n." "But not quite," said Button-Bright sadly. "I'd get along without the sunset if only we could go home." They went in to dinner after this and sat at Coralie's own table with her husband and children and found the meal very good. After a pleasant evening, during which no reference was made to their being prisoners, they were shown to prettily furnished rooms, all in pink, and slept soundly in the soft beds provided for them. Trot wakened early the next morning and went out on the balcony to see the sunrise. The little girl was well repaid, for the splendor of the rising sun was almost equal to that of the setting sun. Surely this was a wonderful country, and much more delightful than the blue side of the island, where the sun was hidden by the great fog bank and only the moon was visible. When she went in she found that both Button-Bright and Cap'n Bill were up and dressed, so they decided to take a walk before breakfast. No one restrained them or interfered with them in any way. "They know we can't get away," observed the sailor, "so they don't need to watch us." "We could go into the fog bank again," suggested Trot. "We could, mate, but we won't," answered Cap'n Bill. "If there's no way for us to get clean off'n Sky Island, I'd rather stay with the Pinkies than with the Blues." "I wonder what they'll do with us," said Button-Bright. "The Queen seems like a nice girl, and I don't think she'll hurt us, whatever happens." They walked freely along the circular street, seeing such sights as the Pink City afforded, and then returned to Coralie's house for breakfast. Coralie herself was not there, as she had been summoned to the Queen's palace, but her husband looked after the guests, and when breakfast was finished he said to them: "I am to take you to Tourmaline, who has promised to decide your fate this morning. I am curious to know what she will do with you, for in all our history we have never before had strangers intrude upon us." "We're curious, too," said Trot, "but we'll soon find out." As they walked down the street they observed that the sky was now covered with dark clouds, which entirely hid the sun. "Does it ever rain here?" inquired Button Bright. "Certainly," answered Coralie's husband. "That is the one drawback of our country. It rains quite often, and although it makes the flowers and the grass grow, I think rain is very disagreeable. I am always glad to see the rainbow, which is a sign that the sun will shine again." "Looks like rain now," remarked Cap'n Bill. "It does," said the man, glancing at the sky. "We must hurry, or we may get wet." "Haven't you any umbrellas?" asked Button Bright. "No, we don't know what umbrellas are," replied the Pinky Man. It did not rain at once, and they reached Tourmaline's wretched hut in safety. There they found quite a number of Pinkies assembled, and a spirited discussion was taking place when they arrived. "Come in, please," said Tourmaline, opening the door for them, and when they had entered she placed a pink wood bench for them to sit upon and went back to her throne, which was a common rocking chair. At her right were seated 6 men and women of the Sunrise Tribe, and on her left 6 men and women of the Sunset Tribe, among the latter being Coralie. The contrast between the plain, simple dress of the Queen and the gorgeous apparel of her counselors was quite remarkable, yet her beauty far surpassed that of any of her people, and her demeanor was so modest and unassuming that it was difficult for the prisoners to believe that her word could decree life or death, and that all the others were subservient to her. Tourmaline's eyes were so deep a shade of pink that they were almost hazel, and her hair was darker than that of the others, being a golden red in color. These points, taken with her light pink skin and slender form, rendered her distinctive among the Pinkies, whatever gowns she might wear. When the strangers were seated, she turned to them and said: "I have searched through the Great Book of Laws and found nothing about foreign people entering our land. There is a law that if any of the Blueskins break through the Fog Bank, they shall be driven back with sharp sticks. But you are not Blueskins, so this law does not apply to you. Therefore, in order to decide your fate, I have summoned a council of 12 of my people, who will vote as to whether you shall be permitted to remain here or not. They wanted to see you before they cast your final vote, that they may examine you carefully and discover if you are worthy to become inhabitants of the Pink Country." "The rose is red, the violet's blue, but Trot is sweeter than the two," declared the parrot in a loud voice. It was a little verse Cap'n Bill had taught the bird that very morning while Trot was seeing the sunrise. The Pinkies were startled and seemed a little frightened at hearing a bird speak so clearly. Trot laughed and patted the bird's head in return for the compliment. "Is the monster man whose legs are part wood a dangerous creature?" asked one of the Sunrise Tribe. "Not to my friends," replied Cap'n Bill, much amused. "I suppose I could fight your whole crowd o' Pinkies, if I had to, and make you run for your lives, but bein' as you're friendly to us, you ain't in any danger." The sailor thought this speech was diplomatic and might "head off" any trouble, but the Pinkies seemed uneasy, and several of them picked up their slender, pointed sticks and held them in their hands. They were not cowardly, but it was evident they mistrusted the big man, who on earth was not considered big at all, but rather undersized. "What we'd like," said Trot, "is to stay here cozy and peaceable till we can find a way to get home to the earth again. Your country is much nicer than the Blue Country, and we like you pretty well from what we've seen of you. So, if you'll let us stay, we won't be any more trouble to you than we can help." They all gazed upon the little girl curiously, and one of them said: "How strangely light her color is! And it is pink, too, which is in her favor. But her eyes are of that dreadful blue tint which prevails in the other half of Sky Island, while her hair is a queer color all unknown to us. She is not like our people, and would not harmonize with the universal color here." "That's true," said another. "The 3 strangers are all inharmonious. If allowed to remain here, they would ruin the color scheme of the country, where all is now pink." "In spite of that," said Coralie, "they are harmless creatures and have done us no wrong." "Yes, they have," replied a nervous little Sunrise Man. "They wronged us by coming here." "They could not help doing that," argued Coralie, "and it is their misfortune that they are here on Sky Island at all. Perhaps, if we keep them for us for a while, they may find a way to return safely to their own country." "We'll fly through the sky by and by, ki yi!" yelled the parrot with startling suddenness. "Is that true?" asked a Pinky, seriously. "Why, we would if we could," answered Trot. "We flew to this island, anyhow." "Perhaps," said another, "if we pushed them off the edge, they could fly down again. Who knows?" "We know," answered Cap'n Bill hastily. "We'd tumble, but we wouldn't fly." "They'd take a fall, and that is all," observed the parrot, fluttering its wings. There was silence for a moment, while all the Pinkies seemed to think deeply. Then the Queen asked the strangers to step outside while they counseled together. Our friends obeyed, and leaving the room they entered the courtyard and examined the rows of pink marble statues for nearly an hour before they were summoned to return to the little room in Tourmaline's palace. "We are now ready to vote as to your fate," said the pretty Queen to them. "We have decided there are but two things for us to do: either permit you to remain here as honored guests, or take you to an edge of the island and throw you over the bushes into the sky." They were silent at hearing this dreadful alternative, but the parrot screamed shrilly: "Oh, what a dump! Oh, what a jump! Won't we all thump when we land with a bump?" "If we do," said Cap'n Bill thoughtfully, "we'll none of us know it." End of chapter 15.